Hi, I'm Pete, and welcome to Just a Few Acres Farm. Today is part 2 of our McCormick Deering 1020 Getting Her Running video series. Today we're going to take this old fuel tank off because it's full of holes, and we're going to put on the fuel tank that we repaired in the last video. We'll tune her up, get her running, and run her around. Hopefully. You never know with these old girls. First thing we got to do is take this hood and side curtain sheet metal off so that we can get the fuel tank off, which is under it. You may be wondering why this was called a 1020, and a lot of tractors of different makes of that era were called something something, 1020, 1530, 2236, and the two numbers designated belt horsepower coming off the belt pulley here because these old tractors powered a lot of belt driven implements, and the other number is drawbar horsepower, or what it could pull if it was hooked up to something on the drawbar. So 1020 means 10 drawbar horsepower and 20 belt pulley horsepower. That's what it was rated at. When it was actually tested, I think this tractor put out about 25 horsepower on the belt pulley and 16 horsepower on the drawbar. Now, that's not the same as your 16 horsepower lawnmower. There's a big difference. This engine is 284 cubic inches. It's 4 1/4 diameter pistons by a 5-inch piston stroke. It's got tons of lugging power. You can't kill this engine once it gets going. More displacement equals more sort of get down low and grunt pulling power. These tractors were made from 1923 until 1939. That's a long production run for a tractor. This is a 1924 model, and it has a lot of early features that disappeared on the later model, like the clutch is a really funky mechanism. It's a multi-disc dry clutch, and I've never seen one like it before. It's actually got a brake pad on the clutch actuator mechanism so that when you push in the clutch, it engages that brake and stops the transmission gears to make it easier to shift. The fuel tank's just held on by these two straps that go over it, and then bolts at the bottom to keep the straps tight. Canvas straps underneath the metal straps to keep the metal from wearing on metal in the fuel tank. You can see the links I went to try and make this old tank usable. I put JB Weld all over the place, and every time I put some JB Weld on, new leaks would develop, so I'd put some more JB Weld on. And it held for a while, but the problem was on this front side of the tank, the heat for some reason made it split like this, and it actually got soft. I'd read online that JB Weld was okay to use, but I don't think I would use it again. See where it's come apart here on the bottom? So anyway, glad we got a new one. Take this sediment bowl off. I also put this screen over the sediment bowl, and these are really handy things. If you've got a little rust or debris in the tank like a lot of old fuel tanks have, this sits in the top of the sediment bowl and keeps all that debris from getting down in. Sometimes there's chunks so big that they'll clog up this inlet hole, and instead of that happening, they get stuck here against the screen or like this up in here. So these work really well. Okay, old tank, bye-bye. A few wraps with Teflon tape. Even though this tractor is called a McCormick Deering, It was made by the International Harvester family, and McCormick and Deering were the two prominent families that came together to make International Harvester one company. These tractors were in competition with the first Farmall, which is the name that everybody associates with International Harvester. But these ran in competition with the Farmall, the first Farmall, which was called the regular, from 1924 till 1939. Even though it was in competition with the Farmall tractor, it still sold well. They sold, I think, about 215,000 of these tractors in their production run from 23 to 39. It was a successful tractor, and it was one of the tractors that farmers bought to replace horses. So this would be the first mechanical, internal combustion engine tractor that a farmer had on their farm. It had to be easy to fix and reliable, and these fit the bill. As opposed to today's vehicles and tractors which take only one fuel, be it gasoline or diesel, this tractor takes two fuels. It's a dual fuel tractor. This is a gasoline starting tank, and they would start the tractor on gasoline and warm it up, and when the engine was warm they would switch it over to kerosene, which was kept in this tank. Kerosene or distillate were cheap alternatives to gasoline when this tractor was built, and farmers could save a lot of money by running on kerosene or distillate. There's a mechanism underneath here where the sediment bowl is to switch from one fuel to the other. There's a petcock on the bottom of the gasoline tank, which you can't see very well, it's right over here. And you would turn the gasoline off and turn the distillate on here, or the kerosene, and it would switch over that way. And then when you shut the tractor off, you had to make sure to turn the gasoline back on and turn the distillate off so that the carburetor had gasoline in it for the next start, because it would be really hard to start cold on kerosene or distillate. And to go along with this system, they had a complicated intake and exhaust manifold, and not many have survived because they were prone to cracking and they were complex castings. This one doesn't have it anymore, but they would have a heat riser manifold where the outgoing exhaust air from the engine that was very hot would cross paths with the intake air, which is coming in cold, and it would pre-warm the intake air like a heat exchanger does, get that air-fuel mixture up to a hot temperature so that it burned cleaner inside the motor. And this is the fuel mixing unit for the tractor. Not really a carburetor in my book because it doesn't have a venturi like a modern carburetor did, but it does take advantage of a pressure differential between vacuum from the engine and incoming air to vaporize fuel and mix it with the incoming air. Even though this tractor was meant to run on kerosene, just start on gasoline, I just run it on gasoline all the time. Makes life simpler. Turn on the fuel. Check for leaks. And we're ready to start her up, which is a process. Old tractors are just like people. Each one gets turned on in a different way. We have to set the magneto impulse, which causes a spring to trip, which rotates the mag really fast when you crank it and generates enough spark to get the motor going. So, not set, set. It'll disengage when the motor starts running automatically. This is the spark advance, changes the relationship of when each cylinder fires in relation to when the piston's at the top of its travel. As the engine's running faster, the spark plug fires a little sooner so that combustion happens more efficiently. Starting out, you want the spark retarded. We have to oil the rocker arms, which are beneath this valve cover. Unlike modern engines, these guys oil by drip on the rocker arms through a felt that's coiled up above the rocker arms. Check to make sure she's in neutral. Pull the choke out all the way. Give her a couple cranks with full choke till we can hear fuel spraying out the bottom of the mixer. Bring it to half choke. This tractor's engine was designed for 1,000 RPMs maximum, and low RPM is about 2 if you listen to it. I love it when you can hear each cylinder firing. It goes really slowly. Here are the controls: clutch and brake. This is a hand brake here. No foot brake, you've got to pull on it. This is gears, 3 forward, 1 reverse. And this one controls the belt pulley. And that's how we shut her off. Run her out of gas so that the carburetor drains. Well, we got the old girl running, and it's not like this is a tractor I'm ever going to use on the farm. I might use it to rake hay someday if I have the time. But it's important to keep history alive, and that's what we do with things like this tractor, as well as our newer old tractors. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time.